Well, hey y'all, and welcome to the Hillbilly Chicken Ranch. I am Susan. I'm your hostess, and we are doing the hashtag 1908 cooking, and we're using this book, 365 Dishes Annotated, from Kris and Larry Homestead. Kris actually annotated this and brought this book back to life for us, and you can find this in the description box below. This is part of a collaboration that I'm doing, and I wanted to share with you that I have picked out some Scotch recipes because I have Scottish ancestry, and I'm going to do 3 recipes to start with, and I may go through the book and do even more, but today I'm going to be doing Scotch scones. This calls for 1.5 pints of flour that is sifted. Add a pinch of salt. Add 1 teaspoon of soda mixed with 1 pint of sour milk. Mix into a soft dough. Lay on a well-floured baking board and roll 1 inch thick. Cut with a round cookie or cake cutter and bake on a hot greased griddle until brown on both sides. Serve hot with butter. So I'm fixing to have lunch, so I thought the scones would be great with this. This book was written in 1908, the original book. So these recipes are well over 1 century old, y'all. But the basis for Scotch scones are pretty much still the same today. It's very similar to the biscuits that we're used to eating without all the fat in it. So we're going to get this started, and I hope that you enjoy this video. See, I have a small griddle here that I'm going to use for this demonstration. I have my mixing bowl, and the recipe calls for sifted flour, so I've got my sifter ready. I actually went and pulled out a quart jar and measured to the 3-cup mark, which would be the amount of flour that they are requiring for this. I used a funnel to get it into the jar. I want it to be as close to how they would do it as I possibly could. So we're going to start by getting our sifter ready. And I'm going to go ahead and pour the contents of this jar into my sifter. It does hold 3 cups. And we're just going to sift. So there we go. We've sifted the flour. It doesn't take long. Now I have used powdered milk for this, and I didn't have any buttermilk on hand or any soured milk, so what I did was I added some lemon juice to this to make it into soured milk. It calls for a pinch of salt. And for those that don't know, a pinch of salt is about 1/8 to 1/4 teaspoon. So this is just a pinch measuring spoon that I actually found. And I'm going to go ahead and get this into my flour. Just sprinkle it across the top. And it calls for 1 teaspoon of baking soda added into my milk. So I pulled some baking soda out, and I'm going to add this into my milk. This is going to be the leavening to this, and I'm just going to get that mixed in there really good. And I've got my butter. My Amish butter is sitting here on the counter softening, and I've got some bacon fat to put on my griddle to cook these with. So this is going to go into my flour, and I'm just going to make a little well in the middle. And we're going to mix this. I've pulled out a spoon in case I need it. But this should come together rather quickly. And it looks like biscuit dough, y'all. That's all it is. It looks like biscuit dough. You want to mix it. Make sure you got all that flour incorporated. And this is a soft dough. And I'm going to get my spoon out and I'm going to bring this all together. And there's your biscuit dough, y'all. Okay, I did forget to mention that I used all-purpose flour because that's what they would have been using back in the day, and that's why you would have to add a leavening into it. And I've got a very old rolling pin. I'm going to use that to roll my dough with, and it says to turn this dough out onto a floured surface. I'm going to move my camera so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm just going to spread this flour around a little bit. We're going to get this dough out of the bowl. And it is a good dough. Very simple recipe. Get that out of the way. Get all this dough off my spoon. And I'm going to flour the top of the dough and my rolling pin. So I'm just going to sprinkle this onto the dough. And then I'm going to flour the rolling pin. This is how my mother did it. And my grandmother always floured that rolling pin. And it says to roll it to 1 inch. So I'm going to roll this a couple of times because biscuits usually, if you want them to be flaky, you want to put some layers in them. Now they may or may have not done this step. The instructions really doesn't say that you need to do that. But we're going to get these cut out. That's about 1 inch thick. Get that dough, that bread off my hands. I'm going to go ahead and get my griddle with some fat. This is probably more than likely what they used was whatever fat they had on hand. And they probably used either tallow or bacon fat, something like that. Now, my biscuit cutter, I'm also going to dip into my flour just to get it kind of coated. And I'm going to go ahead and start cutting out some of these scones. And my griddle will probably hold about 4. And it is very, very hot. And we're going to get these dropped on here. And I'm going to pull the camera back so you can actually see these cooking. And they are already starting to brown. And hopefully they're not sticking. And you're going to allow these to cook for a few minutes. I'm just going to go ahead and flip these. I want to make sure that they're not going to burn on one side, so I'm just going to flip them. And these are going to, oops, it flipped off the griddle, y'all. These are going to continue to cook and rise for a few minutes. I'm supposed to be baking these, so hang on a moment. It actually says to bake on a hot greased griddle, so I am doing this correctly. I do believe you could do these in the oven. It probably will turn out better if you do them in the oven. And I'm just going to continue to flip them until they are done in the middle. And this is probably going to take about 5 to 10 minutes. But you can see they're already rising, and I've got more dough to cut out, so I will be right back. Okay, I'm doing them on top of the stove, but you can do these in the oven, and it calls for a bake on a hot greased griddle and brown on both sides. So I'm assuming that this was done on top of the stove, but you could do these in the oven. Biscuits are usually done at 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm trying to get to her page here. A quick or hot oven would be 400 to 450 degrees, so that would be approximately the temperature that you could bake these on. Now, I am doing them on top of the stove. They're going to take a little bit longer because you got to get that dough in the middle done. And I do believe that this is how they would have done it back in the day on a fireplace. It would have been done on a griddle and put into a fireplace on one of the stones that they had around the sides of the fireplace for you to place pies and breads and stuff to bake. So that would be the ideal way to cook this, but for the time's sake, we're going to do it on top of our stove. And the back ones are getting done. They're still kind of doughy in the middle. And I'm just going to continue to flip these until they are cooked through. I did go ahead and throw 2 more on here. I got 11 and a piece out of my dough. They probably used a smaller dough cutter than I have. I think mine is a 2-inch or maybe a 2.5-inch. They probably used a 1 to 1.5 inch. And we're just going to flip those, and we're going to let these continue to cook. And I do have me some soup over here that I'm going to eat with my scones. So we are going to try it on camera. And I'm turning my burner up a little bit so I can get these done. You can take a lid and place over the top of this if you're doing it on top of the stove to cook them through, which I might do, just to make sure that these are not doughy in the middle. And I will use this one and just cover those 4 for a few minutes. This is kind of how I would cook my English muffins on top of the stove, and they get very tall, so this is kind of the same idea, but this is a biscuit dough. And although the recipe doesn't call for you to cover it, this is going to help hold that heat in there so that it will cook all the way through. And I got a piece right here. Very good. Y'all will like this. Cooking it in the bacon fat is very reminiscent of my grandparents. My camera attachment is not cooperating with me today. It keeps flipping on me. But this is very reminiscent of my grandmother. She would cook these in her oven on her wood-burning stove. And they would come out delicious. But the taste of the bacon fat really gives flavor to these scones. And those have not cooked any. So I'm going to cook these again. Yes, I'm a messy cook. I just knocked something off my thing there. I'm going to flip these and move these around just a bit. And try to get these little ones that I just put on here to start baking. So we're going to go ahead and cover those. Now, if they did it on top of the stoves, of course they would be turning these and trying to get the middles done. And standing them on one side. And I'm going to check these in the middle. Because we don't want them to burn. And they are getting a little bit too much heat. on that one side. We as modern cooks can adjust the heat. And I'm just going to move these over and turn my heat down just a tad. Cover them back up. And continue to turn these that are not under that lid there. I was fortunate enough to spend a lot of time in the kitchen with my grandmother that cooked on a wood-burning stove and learned a lot about cooking the old way. And she was born in 1898, I believe. So she was at the tail end of the 17th century, 18th century. These are about ready. I'm going to check these underneath my thing here. And we're just going to stack them over here just to make sure that they are done all the way through. These are pretty much done, I would say. I'm not feeling any dough, so I'm going to go ahead and remove these from the heat. And we've got a few more that we need to do. Don't they look good though? Don't they look good? Turn my burner down just a little bit because that griddle is very hot at this point. Now, my grandmother always saved whatever little bit of dough that she had left over, and she would use that in her next batch of biscuits. So we're going to go ahead and put that on the griddle. And we're going to get these cooked. And I'll be right back. We're going to go ahead and flip these. And cover them back up. And we're going to check and make sure that it's done all the way through, and I believe it is. And there you go, y'all. Inside of a scones. Very good. I'm just going to turn these on their side now and let them continue to cook a little bit. And I think this little one is pretty much done. We'll just leave it on the griddle for just a moment longer. So these are really good. They look very tasty. I'm going to let these cook for just a moment longer. I'm making sure that they're not going to be doughy inside. Just going around the edges and flipping these. Let them finish cooking. Well, y'all, they look yummy, delicious. I've got homemade Amish butter on these. Oh my goodness. So good. There they are, folks. Cooked on top of the stove, even the little one. Yum, yum. And really cooking them in the bacon fat made all the difference in the flavor. Reminds me of my grandmother's homemade biscuits from many, many years ago. And she cooked them in her wood-burning stove. But she always used the bacon fat. She very seldom had tallow, so she would use the bacon fat. And she would make her biscuits. And she always made them from scratch. She always took the little piece of dough that was left over and covered it on her dough board. And that would be the start of her biscuits for the next day. So everybody, go check out the book on Amazon. I've already got grease marks on this one from working with it today. This is 365 foreign dishes annotated, a foreign dish for every day of the year. It's a 1908 reprint of a cookbook from 1908. Here's the back cover. $9.99 online on Amazon. The link will be in the description box below. A special thanks to Kris and Larry Homestead for including me in this collaboration. Y'all look forward to more of these videos because I will be putting out quite a few over the next few months, I'm pretty sure. I've got a lot of them marked. Y'all have a blessed day.